Today I'm going to try to draw this little neighborhood corner in Tallinn, Estonia. And today is not actually today, as I'm recording this voiceover a few days post-drawing. Seeing how summer is in full swing, my wife and I, along with our dear Estonian friend Iris, decided to spend a few days driving around the country. So this drawing is from maybe 4 or 5 days ago, and while I'm sure I'll have a few things to mention about it, I'd like this video to focus on our time on the road. I'll share a few recollections from the trip itself, but primarily I want to talk about what I learned from this time away, some of the ideas I had time to chew on, and how it feels to come back to all of this. If that sounds interesting to you, spectacular. Change nothing. You're already here. If that sounds dull and or tiresome to you, well, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe you can mute the video and go do something else while it plays in the background. That would be nice. Regardless, I hope you liked the video. I hope you enjoy the chat. And I'd say that's more than enough preamble. So let's get into it. Okay, so before I talk about the trip, I just want to mention my thought process going into this drawing and specifically why I chose this reference. This street corner comes with an abundance of vantage points. I could have set up directly across from it, to the left of this gate, but I wanted to avoid that kind of flat front, straight ahead view of a building like this. I really don't love doing those types of drawings, so as much as I think they make for nice, aesthetically pleasing images, I'm not really the biggest fan of drawing them. There's also the option of across the street to my right, either directly across or catty corner, and I considered that. The light probably would have been better. You can see the building catching it on that right side, but then there would have been a lot more cars, and I wanted this to have as serene an atmosphere as possible, so that was out. Then, and lastly, because this could go on forever, I could have done exactly this, just without the gate in the way. I imagine a lot of normal people would see this as an unnecessary, almost ugly inclusion, like it really is in the way, but I beg to differ. The gate is context, it's foreground. It's the type of thing people might see in a nice painting and think, well, that's a quaint little corner, because the gate is just part of the atmosphere. Would it have been better if I'd raise the camera up above the gate so that the bottom of the building and the top of the gate weren't overlapping the way they are? Yeah, that would have been great, but the tripod only goes so high, and even then I have to sit down anyway. So this is about my perspective, which I think is slightly more important than a minorly better reference video. What do you think? So that was my thought process going into this. I was interested in kind of crafting this whole scene. Foreground was an important factor, the framing was an important factor, and all in all, I think it looks nice but not plain, varied but not complex, which I'm finding is something of a sweet spot for me. Anyway, I'll get back to the drawing in a bit. For now, let's talk about the road trip. So, let's first talk about our friend who made all of it happen. Where the hell do I begin? Okay, a few years ago, we met Iris, who hopefully doesn't mind that I'm using her name. Probably fine, whatever. Our friendship with her was like our friendships with everyone, in the sense that they have to move pretty quickly if they want to survive. We're in and out of places so fast that there's just really not enough time to drag our feet. We don't have many friends for this reason, although there are many acquaintances, but the friends we keep tend to be pretty good ones. With Iris, she was kind and inquisitive, two things that in combination, a lot of people surprisingly lack. And yet they are the two things that I would say foster not only the best friendships, but even just the best one-off experiences with another human being. She put herself out there in ways most Estonians specifically tend not to do, at least when we met her, which was the start of winter, so I don't blame everyone else. If anything, she's the weird one. And anyway, within an hour or two, we all made plans to go ice swimming, like a polar plunge type of thing. And maybe a week later, we were all standing on that icy dock, climbing down a ladder into the Baltic Sea. And it was cold. You stay in for a minute or two, climb back out, jump into the sauna for a while until you're ready to do it all over again. It was a memorable experience and one that would, I think, solidify our friendship with her for years to come. Cut to this time in Estonia, and it's as though we never left, which is a really nice feeling because it's not always like that. In just a few days, we'll be leaving this place for, at minimum, a few months, but probably longer. We're confident our friendship here will endure, but we can't always say the same for other places and other people. So it was a relief that upon seeing her again this time, we all clicked back into place. So much so that we made a bunch of plans, namely this road trip. I don't know how to structure this video, so we'll pause there and return to the drawing for a second. As you can see, I've drawn the gate. That's essentially it. At this point, did I feel a little bit silly about how adamant I was to include it? Please don't ask me that. It took a long time, yes, but by the end, I think it does add a little something extra. In drawing it, I was cognizant of a few things, and that's thanks to the observation stage before I started drawing. So the pillars, they reveal different parts of themselves thanks to the perspective. Duh. The pattern of the gate itself. Had I not spent a few seconds taking that in, I probably would have spent too much time giving too much attention, whereas it's really just some X's, nothing to it. Also, there's the space the gate takes up in the frame, and candidly, I used my phone to help me with that. I checked to see where the pillars sat in relation to the edges of frame, and about how angled the whole structure was. So I had this general shape in mind before I started, and I think that helped a lot. It would have been really easy for me to make this significantly smaller than what you're seeing here, and that would have affected the size of the building and everything else, which is not what I wanted. I liked the framing of the reference video, so I wanted to stick to that as closely as I could. Again, I'm aware of just how much time this took me, but even right now, I'm pretty content with it. As I get into drawing this tree, I'll let you know now that it's going to get the least amount of attention. And that's for two reasons. First, I just spent all that time drawing a rather simple gate, so I'm not going to make that mistake twice. And second, there's quite a bit of detail behind it, making up that building, so I mostly chose to utilize negative space here. By the end, I think it looks purposeful, which is awesome because that is the case, and it helps to frame things in my opinion, in a satisfying way. Right, so this road trip was largely a surprise for my wife and I. Iris planned the whole thing, got everything set up, refused help, and it was amazing. It was such a great time. I won't linger on this too much because I don't really think people care all that much about stuff like this unless they have some personal connection to it, kind of like looking through a stranger's family photos or listening to someone talk about a dream they had. It's just not that interesting, and I recognize that, so I'll be brief. The road trip started in Tallinn. We went east to the town of Narva, which is on the border with Russia. From there, we hit a few smaller places and ultimately ended the day pretty late at a campsite that hosted about 1 trillion mosquitoes, which were no doubt happy to see us, and we were too tired to make dinner, so we went to bed. The next morning, we foraged for mushrooms and blueberries, saw some beautiful old churches, bought some smoked fish on the side of the road to eat by a lake, swam in said lake, and ended the day in Tartu, where Iris cooked us a traditional meal with the aforementioned mushrooms. We woke up to explore Tartu. It's a beautiful city. Hope I go back. Went on an impromptu river cruise where I thankfully got to take some portraits, which was nice. Went on a short hike and ended the day diving from a dock into another lake. We stayed in a little guest house, and I made a pesto mozzarella pasta thing for dinner. I'm not sure why I'm so keen to talk about food, but whatever. Last day, yesterday, we drove to Viljandi, undoubtedly saying that wrong, sorry, to have a pretty specific pastry. We met a friend of ours and then a friend of Iris's who took us on a walk through town. Originally, the plan was to spend the rest of the day there and wake up at 3 o'clock the next morning to go to a bog for sunrise, but none of us slept all that well the night before, and it was feeling like things were coming to an end anyway. So we decided against the extra day and went to another lake for a final swim. Actually, I think it was a quarry, technically, but whatever. And then we drove back to Tallinn. I'm missing many, many things, but like I said, that's on purpose. The whole thing was an incredible experience, unforgettable. Massive thanks to our wonderful friend. I can't wait to come back and do another one. It gave me a much deeper appreciation for a place I already love, and that's saying a lot. Now I have a few thoughts that get into more of the philosophy of it all. But first, let's check in with what the heck I'm up to with this drawing. I don't know what you're thinking, but I'm thinking that gate looks pretty good. In all seriousness, I really do think it grounds everything. And from this point on, I'm kind of just hoping that all of the other things can rise up to meet it. The tree, like I said, isn't going to change much, save for, I think, a small bit of additional texture or something. I don't know. But the building in the background is making its way. I took a few liberties here, and that just comes down to time management, which I didn't. The time, that is. I didn't manage it. I was just getting pretty uncomfortable sitting by this point, so I didn't want to take too much time fussing about what exactly goes where. So by the end, you'll notice a fair bit of difference from the reference to the drawing, but I really don't think it matters at all. There were some mistakes, to be sure, but most of the larger deviations were just imaginative, like extensions of what I'd already drawn. While I'm on the drawing, I'll also call out this new pen that I think I've used for another drawing or two at this point, and it's really not worth discussing more than that. It's the same brand and everything, but it's the 01 size, and I got it because I felt like what I wanted was something between the super thin and super thick pens that I've been using, and that's this. It's working well, and it suits my needs for now, and that's all that matters to me. Okay, I'm probably running out of time, so I want to get to the crux of all this road trip talk so I can really flesh things out. So, first things first, I did not draw on this trip. I did bring my supplies, not only to draw, but to make videos, but I never used them. The first day was particularly packed. We did a lot of driving and had a lot of stops along the way. And if I'm honest, I think that just set the stage for the forthcoming days. On that day, I genuinely didn't have a spare even 10 minutes, let alone 40, which is about how long it takes to do these with the setup included. But I did on the other days, and yet I still didn't draw. And the first thing I'd like to point out is the unfathomable power of consistency and how by not breaking its flow, it can just pull you along irrespective of anything else. I'm sure that's why those like gamified apps all work so well. It's a streak. It's just that simple. It's something you feel compelled to do just because it's part of the pattern. But when that breaks, whether it's a language learning streak on Duolingo or a drawing video making streak, that little gap is anything but little. It feels huge. It's a chasm, and it's really hard not to gaze into it. So unfortunately, the drawings fell away for a few days, and it feels bad. It's not great. In fact, I'm recording this before doing my next one, which means I still haven't fallen back into the groove, and it's gnawing away at my brain as we speak. The sooner I can make one, and then make another and another, the sooner I'll feel normal again, like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. That said, I am ultimately glad to have skipped it on this trip. I think it would have been a serious state change, and that wouldn't have been fair to the others. Which brings me to the second point. The first being consistency, this one being state change. It's something I have a ton of experience with, not only in small ways, but big ones too. Moving myself and everything I own every few weeks is a rather large example of state change, I would say. And for the most part, I'm unbothered by it. I think most things people do on a day-to-day basis can survive pretty extreme state changes, actually. For example, if you exercise consistently, regardless of where you go or who you're with or what city you now live in, keeping up with exercise might demand some adaptability. You might need to lose the weights and try calisthenics for a bit or jump rope instead of run. But for most people, it's not particular enough to get thrown off entirely just by living one way or in one place followed by another, something like that. So for me, photography fits into that perfectly. It doesn't require such specific and stringent parameters that it becomes unfeasible just like that. In fact, fortunately, photography thrives in that, and I'm sure plenty of other things do as well. Drawing probably does. The practice of drawing alone is probably just as positively impacted by state changes as photography, which is why I was really excited to bring my supplies along with me on the trip. I figured this would be kind of like a microcosm of my regular lifestyle, and it would make for great drawings and therefore great videos, which I think would be correct if it didn't come with the sort of jarring state changes that would occur within the rest of the day. So on a macro level, I think yes, the drawings and the videos would have benefited from a handful of completely different locales. But viewed closer up, the shift from waking up, packing the car, taking a drive, seeing the sights, etc., to Zach found something he wants to draw, so the three of us need to sit here and practically do nothing for the next almost hour, is a state change that I think would be difficult to manage, and the mere thought of it ultimately confirmed my doubts. Not to mention, and this is the final portion of this little thought adventure, it would have been unfair to everyone else. There's a marked difference between my wife and I on a leisurely walk through town and a trio actively bouncing around an entire country. There's a difference between waking up and grabbing a coffee and seeing something pretty versus on the way to the store before setting up camp and abruptly stopping the car on the side of the road. I don't think it's okay to drag other people into your dedication if it affects them even in the slightest. To return to the exercise analogy, I can't expect other people to wait for me while I blast out a 90-minute workout because that happens to be part of my routine. If I want to read, I can pop open a book when there's a spare moment or at the bookends of the day. See what I did there? Even with photography, the way that I work, I'm constantly moving. So our time seeing the sights or going on a hike aren't altered at all. My camera's around my shoulder, and if I see a picture, I take it, and then we move on. Nobody else has to stop or wait for me. And unfortunately, as eager and optimistic as I was to make it work, it would have been jarring at best, aggravating and time-wasting at worst to act as though drawing was comparable to any of that at all. And you know what? As much as I dreaded the thought of breaking out of my consistent practice and production schedule, I'll say it again. I had an incredible, unforgettable time. I got to do things and see things I wouldn't have otherwise had the opportunity to do. And by switching this off, if only temporarily, I could wholly absorb it. Plus, I thought this thing through enough to have a backlog for times just like this. So even though I missed a few days of drawing, that doesn't mean you have to, which I know is what you are really concerned about. Cool. So thank you for listening to all of that. I realized I didn't pay much attention to the drawing, but honestly, that's half the fun of these. I think I'd lose my mind if the only thing I could ever talk about was each and every individual mark and line that I make. So it's nice to sometimes, go off script a little and go on a tangential adventure every once in a while. every once in a while. Who am I kidding? It's a lot more often than that. Anyway, overall, I really do like this one. And whatever you think about it, please consider comparing it to my cafe from Jeju Island. I put the two back to back, and there's like a world of difference. If you actually do that, let me know what you think. Also, if you're not already subscribed, please go do that. Like the video, share it, etc. Anyway, I really appreciate you for taking the time to watch this one, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.